So our first speaker is Rachel Dexter. Rachel is the senior occupational therapist from the Cambridgeshire and Peterborough NHS Foundation Trust. Rachel is also a communication coach with extensive experience in supporting international NHS professionals. Like many IMGs, I've personally benefited from her guidance, and so also her support has had a significant impact on my career, honestly. So she will speak today about the communication and healthcare, about clear English, about patient support, and also how to have effective communication with families, skills that are very essential for all healthcare professionals, especially in NHS. Rachel, thank you so much for joining PPAN, and over to you.
Pleasure. Thank you so much, Mahmood. Lovely to be here. And yeah, it's a pleasure. Just to check, can you hear me okay? Microphone's all right? Okay. So I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to put some slides up. So if you just give me 2 seconds. Okay. So you should be able to see the slides okay now. So I want to talk a little bit about communication and culture. And this is aimed at helping you thrive in UK practice. I'm going to build on kind of Mahmood's introduction a little bit. So yeah, I'm Rachel Dexter from Healthy English. So yeah, I'm an occupational therapist in the NHS. I've got about 15 years experience working in the NHS in various different contexts. But I've also lived and worked overseas in both Africa and Denmark. So I have some idea and experience of what it's like to live and work and communicate in a very different culture and very different cultures. And it was during my experience living in Denmark that I started to really realize, having stepped outside of British culture, the kind of things that confuse people. But so British people, I think, can be very confusing. We can be very confusing in terms of our communication style, the expressions that we use, our sense of humor, even the way that we greet people. And I started to become really curious about what was the experience for international doctors coming to live and work in the UK. That led me to start having conversations with doctors. And it became very clear very early on that there were huge challenges that came with coming to live and work and practice and apply your skills within a completely different culture, over and above all the other challenges in the practicalities of moving culture and getting, finding a job, getting all the visas and the applications and getting registration and settling into a new system. But actually, even once you've kind of overcome all those things, that when you come to start your new job, you walk in and you start communicating with your colleagues and meeting families, you realize that there's lots of other challenges that often come with that. So I set up Healthy English around 5.5 years ago. And I do this alongside my NHS work. So I've been supporting international doctors as they adapt to working and communicating in British healthcare through online courses, through resources, webinars, workshops, conferences, and my membership. And I also work with various different NHS trusts in different contexts. And it was a pleasure to get to know Mahmood many years ago, back when I first kind of started. I think it was back when I was still living in Denmark. So today, I want to share 5 quick insights from years of experience listening to and supporting people like yourself that hopefully will help you prepare and overcome some of the biggest, yet often unaddressed challenges that you likely are to face practicing as a doctor within another culture. So this is about awareness. Today, we don't have a lot of time to go into any detail. At the end, I'm going to share a great opportunity for anybody that is interested in further support and training, because there is an opportunity to do that. And obviously, I'll leave time for plenty of questions. So firstly, insight 1. So understand communication styles. This is something that I spend a lot of time teaching, training, talking about, because I find that in my experience, communication styles causes a lot of issues when they're misunderstood. And I think this is the underlying issue that contributes to a lot of misunderstandings and challenges and problems. Now, I actually want to ask you guys a question. I want to, for those of you already living, working, practicing in the UK, how would you describe how British people generally communicate? What words would you use to describe? If you want to pop in the chat or shout out, I'm interested to know what words you would use to describe generally how British people communicate. I don't actually know if I can see the chat, so if somebody can see the chat, they can read out what people are saying. Oh, I can. There we go. Oh no, I can't reach it. And Mahmoud, maybe you could read out what people are saying in the chat.
I can read it, Rachel.
Oh, thank you.
That's a diplomatic.
Diplomatic, yeah.
So I'm Dr. Morshada.
Hi, Dr. Morshada.
Yeah, I recently came in UK, and it's really difficult to understand the UK way of communications because I came from different countries.
Yeah.
So I can understand that they are saying in NHS, they are saying sometimes very short form. That is totally not understandable for our initial days.
Yeah.
And they don't say anything directly. For example, if anything required, do it. It's not like this. But I love to see what's the ultrasound report, for example. It means I have to do the ultrasound, but they're not saying they do the ultrasound.
Yes, so, exactly.
So it's totally different from, I don't know, from my country, I can say. I am not aware of every country.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of other examples. I cannot remember everything, but it's different.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you've said is very relatable, kind of indirect, not clear, makes it difficult, doesn't it? Makes it really difficult. I think there's some other things in the chat, if somebody can share those.
Sorry, Rachel, just a comment to the attendants, please. If you can just share your question through the chat box, and then we can read it through, just for the time management. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think Tariq is we appreciate that, Tariq. And then I think we had need superficial information, not more deep or scientific. This is one of the comments which we had. Here we had a structured, patient-centered, and safety-focused. This is also another comment.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, and I think those are really, really good observations. And I think basically on one end of the scale, when it comes to communication styles, you have direct communication. Now, in a culture that values direct communication styles, the intention is to make the message of the person speaking very clear. So they say exactly what they mean, usually with quite a blunt, direct tone of voice. And the priority is to be unambiguous. So it's pretty straightforward, right? You say what you mean. And there's not a lot of room for misunderstandings. Now, on the other end of the scale, we have indirect communication styles. And with an indirect communication style, the priority is actually quite different. There's a tendency to hide or camouflage the true intention. And there tends to be the use of subtle differences in tone of voice to convey meaning. So in a culture that values indirect communication, often the challenge that you have is somebody might be saying one thing, but implying another meaning, and they might be using subtle changes in tone of voice, for example, to communicate that. So the priority here is actually very different. It's not necessarily to be very clear. The priority is usually to maintain harmony, avoid conflict, offense, or embarrassment. And the politeness is seen as more important than being clear and truthful. So we have two very different communication styles. Now, put your hand up, or just put yes in the chat if you can relate to growing up in a culture that values direct communication. And I'm going to come out of screen sharing for a minute because I want to actually move my chat thing. Hold on. I was going to try and move the chat thing. Let me just. Okay, well, we'll forget that a minute. Okay, so who relates to growing up in a culture that values direct communication? My guess is that most people are saying yes. Is that right? in my...
I think all Egyptians are doing that. Yeah.
Exactly, right. So all of you can relate to growing up in a culture that values direct communication. Now, in the UK, as you've already kind of shared through your experiences and your observations of communication in the UK, generally British people value indirect communication style. Now, obviously, these are generalizations. There are some regional differences as well, but generally more indirect communication is valued. Now, it's not that one communication style is better than the other. They are very different though. But if you are within a culture where everybody has grown up with valuing the same communication style and you are all communicating within that style, then you don't really come across too many issues. People understand each other. So if you're within a culture that values direct communication and everybody's communicating in that way, you can clearly understand what everybody means. Also, if you value an indirect communication style and the people that you're communicating with it have grown up valuing that same style, again, you can usually understand what people mean because you are used to having to tune into differences in tone of voice and to kind of work out the actual meaning of what people are saying. So it's not necessarily that one is better than the other. The challenge comes when you have the two that come together and there's little awareness or understanding of each other's communication style. And then we get this clash of cultures. We have people working together, communicating together, caring for patients together, that come from cultures that value communication styles very, very differently. And so we get this clash. So, for example, and you can probably relate to your own experiences, for example, a statement given in an indirect style may seem to many of you confusing, unclear, evasive, or even suspicious to someone from a cultural background that values direct communication. On the flip side, cultures that prefer indirect styles might see some direct statements as rude, self-centered, or uncaring towards the other person. And it's this misunderstanding and misinterpretation of the style that is valued. So my first insight is to understand communication styles. We need to understand the differences that we are bringing together and that we are working together with. Direct communication applied in a culture valuing an indirect style can come across as unintentionally rude. And many people that I've supported have unfortunately been misjudged as rude and bossy simply due to a misunderstanding of communication styles. So all you might be doing is applying a communication style that is highly valued in your home culture, but it's being misinterpreted within a different culture. So learning to soften your communication can be really helpful. Learning to put those softeners in. The other thing that you need to be aware of when you're practicing in a culture like the UK that values indirect communication, and I think you've already mentioned this already, instructions can be hidden in polite phrasing. So it can be very easy to actually miss a direct instruction that your supervisor or your colleague might give you because of the way that they phrased it. For example, you might want to consider, it might be a good idea. If it was me, I would do this. And things are phrased in a way that often comes across as optional. And so you might go and think, well, I don't want to do that. You know, I've listened to what they've said, but I'm not going to choose to do that. You think you've been given an option. They think you've given a direct instruction. And we can see where some of these confusions can start to cause issues, especially when we're caring for patients at the end of the day. So being aware that those direct instructions can be hidden sometimes in polite phrasing, and it can be phrased as optional, is really, really important. And the other thing that I wanted to just briefly say today when it comes to communication styles is that as doctors practicing in the UK, you need to learn to listen more with your eyes, which sounds strange because how do you listen with your eyes? But this is about tuning into the non-verbal communication. And I go into a lot of detail in this in other training. But very briefly, because you cannot necessarily rely on patients, parents, families, always directly saying exactly what they mean, you need to learn to listen to tune into the non-verbal communication. Now, non-verbal communication is more powerful than verbal communication. If you look at what communication is and you break it down, it's about between 7 and 30% of what we communicate around that is the verbal, is what we say. The rest is non-verbal. So in a culture like the UK that values indirect communication, a very large percentage of what people communicate is non-verbal. So we need to be tuning into tone of voice, eye contact, posture, the way that they're sitting. Are they kind of avoiding eye contact? Are they fidgeting a lot? What is their tone of voice telling us? What is their facial expressions telling us? People can use understatements to describe their situation. So words that come across as if they're okay, like, yeah, it's been a little bit difficult, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't really, really struggling. So paying attention to the nonverbal communication is hugely important when practicing in the UK. Rarely people will display a lot of outward emotion. We're quite reserved emotionally, and sometimes that means we can miss the depth of the struggle or the pain or the difficult situation that people are going through. Now, going back to communication styles, I'm just going to give you examples with all these insights of the difference that simple changes can make. Going back to giving direct communication, I worked with a doctor who changed the way he gave instructions. So he softened his instructions with the nursing staff, and he began to find that they were much more ready to help him because he wasn't coming across any more unintentionally as rude or bossy. So rather than saying things like, pass me the notes, could you just pass me the notes, please? Or start Ali Obs to, if you could just start him on Ali Obs, that would be great. Thanks. So sometimes just very simple changes, adding softness to communication, can really help with your relationships with teams. So my top tip for Insight 1, be observant and listen to how people communicate. How do they give instructions? How do they give feedback? What do you notice? It's about curiosity and asking questions and being aware that we communicate in very different ways. So understand communication styles, Insight 1. Insight 2, partnership, not power. Now, we're talking here about the relationship between the doctor and the patient, or in your circumstances, it's parents, isn't it, on families, carers. So what a patient or a parent values from a relationship with the doctor can differ from culture to culture. And that's another important thing to be aware of. The UK doctor-patient relationship there's a strong emphasis on collaboration, not being authoritative. Now, many I work with, and I'm sure the same may well be for you, come from cultures where the authority and respect of the doctor is unquestioned. So as a doctor, you already have that respect. Patients and our relatives value an authoritative doctor that says what's happening and what's going to happen and what needs to happen. And if you ask them, what do you think? How do you feel about this? They might even think you were incompetent. Why are you asking me? You're the doctor. But it's generally different here. But it's generally different, particularly amongst the younger generations, and many of you will be working with people in that generation. Parents expect shared decision-making and open discussion. They want to be involved in decision-making, usually, to work in partnership and to feel listened to. And being listened to is one of the key things that leads to satisfaction. So when people feel listened to, when parents feel listened to, you are caring for their most precious thing in the whole world. They want to feel like they're being listened to with their concerns, how they feel about things. On the flip side, not feeling listened to is one of the biggest factors in a lot of complaints. So make sure that you are allowing the parent, the carer, the patient to express their feelings, to be involved in decisions where appropriate, and to feel like they're part of the discussion and they've got time to ask their questions. Trust is earned through empathy, not assumed through authority. You cannot assume that you automatically have the trust and respect of the parents and the families that you're working with just because you are a doctor. In some cultures, that's enough. But building rapport here is so important to achieving the best outcomes. So don't overlook the power of really simple things like a smile, introducing yourself clearly and showing interest in the family and the child that you are working with. First impressions are really, really powerful and will set the tone for your whole interaction. And there may well be very difficult conversations that you have to have with that family. So gaining trust is really important. Parents need to trust you if you can get effective outcomes for their child. And this is just another example. This is a doctor again, that I worked with, who changed the way that he started his conversations with patients on ward rounds. So rather than just kind of standing and just going straight into the conversation, he began to start to do just really simple things. He prioritized sitting at eye level, smiling and introducing himself clearly and showing interest in building rapport. And what he was saying was that actually people, the patients, were requesting him above other consultants. It was like, I want to speak to this doctor, because they felt like they were listened to and that they could trust him. So my top tip for Insight 2, first impressions are made in the first few seconds. I mean, some research actually shows that even within the first part of a second, people have already made an impression of you. So think about how you can use that first few seconds with a patient, with their family, intentionally to help gain trust and build rapport, because that is going to set the tone for your whole interactions with them. And it might be something as simple as smiling. And I talk about smiling quite a lot because it's something that we forget to do quite often. But it changes the whole feel. It changes how you come across as approachable and friendly and warm and caring. Sitting at the same level as the parents, as the patient. Perhaps it's just taking a few seconds to ask them, how did you sleep last night? How are you coping with hospital food? Or commenting on the cuddly toy or the knitted blanket that their child has. These simple things can make it human and can help you to build rapport and trust. So think about your situations and how can you be intentional about building rapport to set the whole tone for your interaction. Insight 3. So we've talked about communication styles. We've talked about understanding the collaborative emphasis here on the relationship with your parents and your patients. Insight 3, belonging starts with a chat. Now, this is more focused on your relationships with colleagues. The reason that I talk a lot about building social relationships with colleagues, and I've got a lot of training around this, because so many doctors that I work with feel very isolated. They feel like they can maybe handle the professional conversations, but when it comes to the social chats over lunch or in the staff room or wherever it might be, they feel very isolated and quite anxious about joining in. And so many people end up in a spiral of avoidance of any kind of social conversation. And they end up isolating themselves because they feel self-conscious, or they worry that they're not going to understand the topics that people are talking about. They might be, their conversation won't flow, they won't understand the expressions. And so they end up isolating themselves. The problem is the situation only gets worse. Investing in social relationships is really, really important. Social connection is part of your professional success in the NHS. The stronger your social relationships with colleagues, the better your professional relationships. The two go hand in hand. Think about it. It's much easier in a work professional context to approach a colleague, discuss about a patient, ask for help, when you've developed a social connection with them, when they know you, when you know them, when you've got some common ground. So social connections are part of your professional success in the NHS. Making an effort to get to know your colleagues socially has a huge impact on how you can work professionally and fit in with the team. So don't underestimate how important it is. And my first kind of tip when it comes to investing in social relationships, and it's a really simple thing that you can do, is to be more responsive in social conversations. So when your colleague greets you and says, how was your weekend? Or how was your morning? Or have you got any nice plans for the weekend? Rather than just answering the question and then stopping, answer the question and then ask questions back. Show interest, ask your colleague a question, follow it up, and show interest. And it's surprising how quickly that you can build up common ground and find things that you connect over. And it's a really simple thing to do. I always give the analogy of a tennis game. I don't know if you've ever watched a tennis match at Wimbledon or any other tennis match. Now, the best, most engaging tennis to watch is the ones where you get really good rallies, where they're quite evenly matched and the ball's going either side of the court. The most boring tennis to watch is when you've got somebody with a really strong serve and they serve the ball and the person can't get it back, and then the game stops and you're waiting for them to serve again. And that's what it's like with a conversation. If you answer a colleague's question but don't ask a question back, you shut down that conversation. You're relying on the other person to keep going and they will give up very quickly. So be more responsive in conversations. Ask some questions back. And remember, you don't need to understand the topic to join in. If you wait until you understand everything that people talk about, you will never join in conversations. I don't understand a lot of things people talk about. So you can join in even if you don't understand the topic by just listening or showing questions or showing interest and asking questions. And the other thing that's really important when it comes to investing in social relationships is to understand the role of small talk. Now, small talk is that kind of safe, casual conversation that we use when we don't know people very well. In British culture, small talk is really important. We aren't very open with people that we don't know. In some cultures, they don't really do small talk. They just kind of skip it. In Britain, pretty much every social and professional interaction starts with a bit of small talk. It kind of sets the tone. We don't ever go into the kind of direct and important topic straight away. So we use the topics like the weather. Yes, we use the weather a lot, don't we? We're obsessed with talking about the weather. Travel, pets, plans, music, food, hobbies, all these kind of safe topics. They don't cause controversy. They're the safe things that we use to talk about when we're getting to know people. And we avoid the things that are going to be potentially controversial. So things like marriage and family, until your colleague volunteers information about their kids or their partner, then we don't really want to make assumptions and ask questions. Once they volunteer that information, then we have permission to ask some questions about it. But things like personal wealth and finances, personal appearance is a big one. In British culture, particularly for men, if they make comments on a woman's personal appearance, they will make them feel uncomfortable. So age, politics, religion, these are the things we avoid when we don't know people very well. And a lot of people that I have worked with have said, I hate small talk. And I understand why. Sometimes it can just feel like meaningless, but it's understanding what small talk does. And I love this kind of pyramid idea where we have small talk at the bottom, we have deep talk at the top. And it's thinking about conversations as a pyramid. So we start at the bottom of the pyramid. We ask them, how their weekend was, or have we got any plans for the weekend, or how was your morning, or, about the weather or the traffic or their commute into work. We use these small talk topics, but we don't stay at the bottom of the pyramid. We use things that we then find out in the conversation to start moving to deeper topics, and that's how we build deeper connections. And I'm going to give you one quick example. In my office, we have a big shared office, and at lunchtime we go into the kitchen, and there's 3 microwaves, and we often end up standing waiting for our lunch to heat up, and somebody else is stood there waiting for their lunch to heat up, and it's a little bit awkward standing there in silence. So the other week I was in the kitchen, and there was another gentleman in the kitchen heating up his lunch, and it was silent. And all I said was, "That smells nice. What are you having for lunch?" And that was all it needed to get a conversation going and break the silence. And within 15 minutes in the kitchen, we were talking about travel. He was from South Africa. I knew how he'd met his wife, his retirement plans. We were talking about issues with our kids. And all that needed was that just somebody to start it and break the ice and use that small talk. And we got very quickly to really deep topics, and we connected, and we found things that we had in common. So I think it's about reframing small talk. Small talk is like a treasure hunt. We are looking for interesting pieces of information that we might connect over, that will lead to the conversation to unexpected places and deepen our connections. But if you don't start to dig, you're not going to find any treasure. So we have to pick up the spade and dig below the surface. That's what small talk does. So be intentional about social conversations. They can have a massive impact on how you feel within your life and work in the UK. And another example, I love this one. This was a doctor that I was working with, and he was saying that he used to come into work, he'd just do his job, he would never engage in social conversations and just go home again. And so when we were working together, he started to be more intentional. He used small talk to greet his colleagues and showed interest, as well as being more responsive in conversations by asking questions back. And soon he was like, I'm joining in social events. He felt so much happier going to work. And he was even commenting that his colleagues were now going out of their way to actually help him at work and make his job easier. And that's the power of investing in social relationships. So my top tip for Insight 3, group situations are often far more challenging. Group social events, big group discussions. So what I would advise is find opportunities to get to know your colleagues one-to-one. So try using simple questions like how was your morning, or if they have got any plans for the weekend, when you're in those one-to-one contexts. Because the more you build up some connections with a few of your colleagues, so you feel more comfortable with them, they get to know you more, then the easier it becomes in the group situations. And remember, your conversations don't have to be perfect. People appreciate friendliness and interest above perfect English. And talking about perfect English, that brings me on to Insight 4. Say goodbye to textbook English. Now, if you've been in the UK for any length of time, you'd already noticed that we don't speak how English is taught as a second language. And it's frustrating because you learn English, you pass all the exams, the English exams that you need to pass, and then you come to the UK and you realise English people don't actually speak like that. You'll hear colloquial expressions and regional accents. There's over 40 different regional accents in the UK. Patients don't use technical language either, do they? Your parents that you're working with won't use technical terms. They will use slang terms and expressions and idioms. So be aware of that. And tuning into regional accents is really important. If you're in an area of the UK that has a strong regional accent, like Manchester or the West Country or Wales, Scotland, every regional accent has a name. So the regional accent in Manchester is Mancunian. Now you then go onto YouTube and find out videos that talk about the Mancunian accent, the expressions that are used, how it sounds differently. Tune into local radio stations and news channels so you can tune into what's going on in your local area and listen to the presenters that are speaking with those accents so that you can help expose yourself. That's going to help with listening to parents. But also, don't be afraid to ask for someone to slow down or clarify. If you're working with a parent and their regional accent is very strong, just say at the beginning, I love your accent, but I'm getting used to it. If you could just speak nice and slowly for me. It's much better to be up front at the beginning rather than try and muddle through the conversation and struggle. So don't be afraid to ask for someone to slow down or to clarify. Just to give an example of the kind of effect that colloquial language can have, I've worked with several doctors who have had patients with the elderly, this is the elderly generation, that said they needed to spend a penny. Now, to spend a penny means to urinate. The older generation often use it because you used to have to spend a penny to use the public toilet. And the doctor took this literally and started to worry that they were suffering from delirium and started to change the plan based on that. So becoming aware of the expressions that are relevant to your patients and to the parents that you're working with is really important. Don't get overwhelmed. What I would say is learn a couple of new relevant expressions a week. And that word relevant is really important. If you're working in pediatrics, you're working with children, you're working with families. So focus on the kind of expressions that will be used by children and families. And when it comes to everyday life, when it comes to relationships with colleagues, focus on expressions that are going to be relevant to the things that you talk about. If you love sports, then try and be intentional about learning the kind of phrases and expressions that people will talk about. Focus on things that are most relevant and helpful to you. And Insight 5, learn to be kind to yourself. This is probably the most important insight I'll probably share with you today. The challenges that you face aren't your fault. You are learning to adjust to life and practice in a different culture, and it's not always going to be a smooth journey. It's about progress, not perfection. You're not alone. I've worked with thousands of doctors over the years, and you are definitely not alone. So be kind to yourself. If you're struggling or a conversation doesn't go so well, it doesn't mean you're a bad doctor. These are opportunities to learn from and reflect. And cultural adjustment does take time, it takes patience, but it does get easier. And learning these insights now can help prevent a lot of misunderstandings and difficulties. And remember that connection matters more than perfection. Don't hold yourself back because you think you have to be perfect at the language. You have to be perfect at your English. You need perfect grammar and perfect sentence structure. Don't put pressure on yourself to phrase everything perfectly. Native speakers often can't do that. They fumble over their words, they explain things in different ways. The most important thing is, are you connecting with the parents, the family, your colleagues? Connection matters much more than perfect English, which in my opinion, doesn't really exist anyway. So my final top tip is make sure you don't do this cultural journey alone. Whatever picture you look like, whatever stage you're at, make sure that you have support and community. Knowing that you're not alone in the challenges you face is really, really important. And having guidance to help apply your amazing skills to their fullest potential within UK culture can help you thrive. So before we stop and answer any questions you've got, I'm very happy to do that. I'll spend a couple of minutes for anybody interested in getting more targeted training and support to adjust to practice within UK culture. I have got a special opportunity for attendees today. So I'm just going to spend just a couple of short minutes talking about the NHS Success Pathway. So this is my membership that I've developed over 6 years of working with international doctors. It's a space that I've created so that you can work through all the challenges of cross-cultural communication, so you can feel more confident, more valued and more respected, both in your UK career, but also life outside of work. Because when you come to move to another country, it's not just about the job, is it? It's about life as well. So I'll take a few minutes to share what it looks like. So that I've created it for people who are already here in the UK or planning to move to the UK and you want to settle in with confidence. It's for people who wants to help bridging that gap between your skills and the challenges of applying them within a new culture. And it's for those who don't want to kind of have to do the trial and error mistakes so that many IMGs have to face. And it's for those who are ready to feel at ease, valued and respected in your NHS role, because that's what you deserve to feel. So what does it include? So as part of my membership, you get access to weekly live teaching and speaking practice sessions with me. Every Wednesday night on Zoom, I am live teaching. I give out the schedules at the beginning of the month that we're going to be looking at over the month. And all the training sessions, the teaching sessions are recorded and available in the Healthy English app for those that can't join live. And there's always a chance at the end for discussion, questions and speaking practice for those who want. And we look at topics all about British culture, communication within British culture, both social communication, professional communication, and on the different challenges that you face. As a member as well, you get access to my digital library. There's over 100 on-demand self-paced videos and resources in there, guides that you can download, colloquial guides, social connection guides, short videos, and also all of my online courses. And they're all available for members in the app. But the best thing about the membership, the thing that I'm passionate about, it's not just about giving you loads of resources that you have to work through. It's about learning how to actually use them together step by step. So as part of the membership as well, there's an exclusive WhatsApp community. So opportunity to connect, network with like-minded people, ask questions. It's where I share the meeting links and answer any of your questions or situations that you're struggling with, as well as sharing expressions every week as well to help you learn those colloquial expressions. And you also get direct access to me for questions and support. I'm passionate about supporting people. And if that's something that you would benefit from, then I want to have that opportunity for you. Now, how much is it? Usually, the membership is £97 a month. For you here today, I've got a discount link that will be shared in the chat that you can access the membership for a discount saving of over £60 every month. So it makes the membership just £37 a month. A great opportunity if you are interested in joining. There's also a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you try it, you don't like it, just message me. I'll refund the money anyway, and you can cancel anytime. You have complete flexibility. So if you sign up today, the link should be in the chat. You can get that discount. That's fixed for as long as you want to be a member. And I'll also have a 30-minute one-to-one call to onboard you and to get to know your situation for every member that joins as well. So I am very happy now to, I think we've got 13 minutes to have any discussion or ask questions. So I will I'll come out and stop sharing my screen, if I can do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Rachel. That's really informative, and I think we have very positive comments here. We have a comment from Dr. Ahmed Hatata. He said, "Yes, thank you so much. It's a great talk. I should have heard this talk 10 years ago." And yeah, many thanks as well from different members. And one of the member saying, "Thanks, Rachel. I saw you in Facebook, and now I understand why your face is so known to me."
I can see
you.
the chat now. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can see as well. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Very nice, Rachel. So I think that's really informative talk, and that addresses lots of the important way of communication, especially for the newcomers to the country.
Yeah.
Now back to Mahmoud.